Well, I think that's the hardest transition to make is when you go from doing everything yourself to starting to learn to work smarter. So like you just want to muscle through it. Like I could just keep working, right? But then I don't have to think as much. I don't have to strategize. Like I'm just going to keep working because then I'm feeling productive because I'm actually doing something.
Yeah.
But in reality, you need to take a step back and it's like, okay, how can I build a strategy? How can I actually plan and incorporate my team to help me accomplish this? Because the group as a whole is going to be a lot more efficient and faster than me trying to do this all by myself.
This episode is brought to you by Restaurant Systems Pro.
With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, CEO of Bango Bowls, Ryan Thorman. My man Ryan, are you feeling unstoppable today?
Completely unstoppable.
Yeah, man. And I just had James on the show. He's the CEO of Upstream Hospitality Group, who is the CEO of the holding company that you're a part of. And he had amazing things to say about you and Bango Bowls. But I think we're going to go a little bit deeper
100%. Today.
Plus, I'm really excited just to get into your story because you did not take a traditional path to get here.
No, I've been around.
Yeah, you tried all different sorts of things. So I can't wait to dive into it. But let's get that motivational and inspirational ball rolling with the success quarter mantra. What do you got for us?
Feedback is the breakfast of champions.
Ooh, feedback is the breakfast of champions. Dive into that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes to your employees, to your customers. It's literally everything you do. The more willing and able you are to take feedback, the better and more specific you can get to improving your product or your service or whatever it is.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's, you have to be open because, we talked about it a little before, is your ability to understand different opinions or different ways of looking at things will make you smarter and make you understand more people, right? Like as a CEO, your goal is to motivate people. So the more people you can understand and see their points of view, I think the better off you're going to be as a leader. You're not going to connect the same way with every person, right? So the more open you are to figuring that out, and you do that by feedback, right? You only know what you know.
Right. Feedback. So when you say feedback, are you thinking like personal feedback or just general feedback?
All feedback.
All feedback.
Personal feedback, customer feedback, employee feedback, literally anybody who will give you their opinion on the way they're perceiving what you're saying.
Yeah. That's the first time this quote, breakfast of champions is feedback. Is that what it is? Or how do you say it?
Feedback is the breakfast of champions.
Yeah, dude. And when I hear that, I think of just emotional intelligence being the peak, self-awareness being the peak of emotional intelligence.
No doubt.
And how do you become self-aware? I mean, you can do it on your own.
Yep.
That's one way of just being aware of how people act around you.
Yep.
But if you literally open up a floodgate to your face of just feedback, how much better is that?
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I just think the more self-awareness, like you just said self-awareness, I think is one of the largest skills, the most important skills you could have in any role, whether it's a CEO or a server or a waiter. Like it's just so important to understand how you're being perceived, so then you can tweak and you can get better.
Right. And this episode, as far as I'm aware, is scheduled to go live August 17th.
Nice.
4 days before a live workshop that we're hosting with the author of What Is It Costing You Not to Listen? So I just want to give our listeners, you're missing out on an opportunity to learn how to get feedback. Yeah. And she's going to give us like a step-by-step process to do that. So if you're listening to this within days of it going live, please RSVP to that workshop because feedback is so important.
No doubt.
And getting it and getting the tools to know how to get it is even more important. So awesome way to get this thing started. And where does it make sense to start sharing your story? Because like I mentioned in the intro, you have a very convoluted, not direct path into the hospitality industry.
Yeah,
well, you
100%.
started in the hospitality though, didn't you?
I started, I grew up in the hospitality business. As a kid, I always worked. I was a dishwasher when I was 14 years old. We could start there, I guess. I'll fast forward from 14 to 22, I guess, when I get out of school.
Yeah, give me the fast forward version.
Yeah, no doubt. So, grew up in the hospitality business, worked as a dishwasher, got promoted to a busboy. Didn't really want to be a busboy because I really wasn't loving talking to people, so they put me back in the dish pit. But as I continued to grow and stayed in the hospitality business, server, bartender, literally did it all. Went to school, played sports in college, so I was big into all sports. I played soccer, but I was the collegiate D1 athlete.
I would have guessed rugby.
Yeah, I'm built a little bit bigger for a soccer player. Most people ask if I'm the goalie, but I wasn't. I was a center back. Put on a few pounds since then, for sure. But right out of school, I interned for Madison Square Garden while I was still in school in a sponsorship role.
What was the degree you went to school for?
I went for business management,
Okay.
but I always was around sports, right? I had a personal connection who worked in Madison Square Garden. They got me an internship. I had a few more months left of school after that internship. So before I went back to school, they offered me a permanent job when I came back. So I took that right away. So I worked in sports for a while, maybe 5-6 years.
Do you remember what you wanted to do? Was there that younger version of yourself, straight out of college, still wet behind the ears? Did you have a vision, a dream for yourself?
Honestly, no clue. Like, I always had entrepreneur itch, but like I wasn't a true entrepreneur, right? Like, I needed structure. I needed that foundation to really.
A friend to hand you a company and say, "Here, become the CEO of this.
Yeah.
Take the leap. You got it."
Yes. Yeah. I needed to grow to that.
Yeah.
And I didn't have it as a young kid, right? So for me, the best way to start was to be in a structure, be in a larger company, learn process, systems, scale. And that's kind of where I started at, in sports, because I love sports. So it was like natural for me to be working in sports. As I got a little bit older, I started to really understand that, like, if you're going to work in professional sports, there's only so many teams in every city, right? So if you're going to keep climbing that ladder, there's a lot of movement that kind of has to take place. And I've been with my wife since I was 15 years old. She didn't want to move. She's very tight with her family. I'm close to my family. So we were like, I think I need to make a transition. And at that point, somebody introduced me to somebody in tech, in the marketing side of the world. I worked for a small B2B advertising company called Bizzo, where we were only 100 people there. Quickly after I was there, I'd say I was there for less than a year, and LinkedIn acquired Bizzo. So now I went from like being in sports, learning a new industry in tech, to now working for one of the biggest social platforms in the country, which is like a totally different thing for me, like wild,
right. And that's what I was. So this is what I have in front of me, just to give the listeners an idea when I was doing my research. So graduate from Lander University. You went to school for marketing, was it?
Yeah, business management.
That was 2007.
Yeah.
2007, Madison Square Gardens partnership coordinator. 2009, Jets accountant executive. 2011, Legends Hospitality corporate account executive. This is where I started thinking, this is when he starts diverging towards hospitality. Nope. Data monitor director in BizDev. That was 2013 for about 8 months.
Yeah.
And then Bizzo account executive, which got acquired by LinkedIn 2014. And then you were there for 2 years before joining forces with Bango Bulls.
Yeah.
So I was like, how?
It's wild. I know. Wild.
I love it. But apparently, you said that there was a lot of growth, right?
Tons of growth.
So where do you think, did you skip over all that other stuff because there wasn't much growth there in your opinion?
Yeah, I think when I was I was working in sports, it was a lot of the same thing. It was a heavy grind. I was in day-to-day sales. Like, I started in sponsorships and then I moved over to ticket sales. So I was making 100, 200 phone calls a day. So it was like a grind, like anyone who's ever been in a real sales job where you have to bang phones, like you got to come to work like ready every day. There's like, you literally can't take a day off because you got to be in a great mood to bang 200 phone calls in a day. Yeah. Right. So like after X amount of years, that just wears on you, and like, I'm not lazy, right? Like, but like that just,
this was at Bizzo that you're
No, this is when I was at the Jets. When I'm just pounding phones, 100%. So that was where it was starting to wear on me, and that's why I was like, I think I need to move out of sports.
Got
right?
it.
I didn't want to move to another city to work for another team somewhere else across the country. And I was like, I don't know how much I could do, how much more I want to do this anymore.
Yeah, I feel that.
The day-to-day grind overtook the love of sports, right? And then as soon as I lost that love of working in sports, that's when I was like, I really need to do something different, where a little bit more strategy.
You end up hating the thing you love.
100%. 100%. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. Are you still a Jets fan today, or did you ruin it for you?
I'm a Giant season ticket holder. I wasn't allowed to tell anyone at the time, but
funny.
Yeah.
You did about 2 years with Legends Hospitality Corporate.
Yeah, so it was a similar type of role. We worked on projects. So Legends is actually owned. It's the same seating company that does Yankee Stadium, same as the Cowboy Stadium. They have two different sides of their business. They have a ticketing side of their business, and they have a hospitality side of their business.
Oh, cool.
So I worked more on the ticketing side of the business. So Legends was hired for a project for Red Bull Arena in New Jersey for the soccer team. So I got put on that project, and I worked in Red Bull Arena as a sales rep for Red Bull, but I was actually a Legends employee.
Okay, got it. What exactly was it that you were selling?
Tickets and sponsorships.
So what do you, by sponsorship, like people to come sponsor like the stadium?
100%. See the name on the board, see the name above the naming rights of the stadium, all that type of stuff.
And that was all cold calls.
Yeah, a lot of cold calls.
Maybe you could teach me something about selling ad space.
I think I lost all the ability. I completely put it out of my mind.
So I mean, I can see how that grinds. I'll be honest, and like no disrespect to my current sponsors, like I love my sponsors, super grateful for them. It's the part of my job I like the least.
Yeah.
It's hard just to go sell yourself, man.
100%. And I don't think, there's a lot of people who are going to say the exact same thing.
Yeah. It's just like, oh, can I just do what I do? Do I have to like prove myself to people and try to get an ROI on them? It muddies the water for sure.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. But you got to open the doors. Like I get it. I see the benefit of it. And I'm sure you do too, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for my sponsors. I get it. Like I'm grateful for my sponsors. I just wish that they would line up.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. But that's what we talked about that self-awareness. Like that's where that comes in, right? Like you got to be able to take those 100 no's before you get the one yes. Exactly. And if you don't learn from those 100 no's, then you're not going to get to the yes.
Yes.
So you have to go through that stuff
for sure. So you move on from Legends in 2013. You found yourself a data monitor.
Yep.
Is this when you start saying like I need to make a shift in my life?
That was like my quick jump. I was like, I have to get out of sports, and I took that next role, and that job was not good. I was like, oh my god, that was like my midlife crisis. I was only 27 at that point, but I was literally like walking down the streets of Manhattan. I walked into a Barnes and Noble, I think, and bought an LSAT book because I was like, maybe I'll be a lawyer. I don't know, So I was like, I literally didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I was frustrated. I was bent out of shape, and I was legit like lost at that time.
Well, this is around the time as young men we start to become much more self-aware.
Yeah.
They say your frontal lobe finishes rounding off around the age of 27 years old, late 20s. Were you more self-aware? At this point, what would you say your strengths and weaknesses were? Where were you strong?
I've always been confident, so I've always like sometimes overconfident, right? Like where I want to get to the next stage too soon, too fast. I'm like, I shouldn't still be here, right? So I didn't have that patience that sometimes you learn some key things in that timeline. And if you just want to force and rush everything, sometimes you miss a lot of those key learnings. And that's kind of where I was, it's like, I'm better than this. I don't want to be doing this anymore. I want to be making more money. I want to be happy, with my work every day. And I just wasn't there.
What were the key learnings you missed?
I don't know. I was like head down, like too far ahead of myself, running, and without direction. I think that's the part.
I just had a conversation with Ed Doherty about this, a recent guest on the show.
Okay.
And he was saying one of the biggest challenges with this generation, and he's an older guy talking about like the Gen Z that's coming up. There's this false prophecy of work-life balance.
Totally.
And he's like, you have to sacrifice. You have to be patient. You have to do things for years.
Yep.
10,000 hours, right?
Yep.
Who was that? Malcolm Gladwell. Outliers.
Yep.
Before you start to, you can get that flyweight or with a flywheel that builds momentum. And then only once you've built that momentum, but that takes that time, that pressure. Do you think that that's a safe saying that people today aren't patient and they just want, is it the world we live in where everything's so instant maybe?
I do believe that. I think everyone is just so used to instant satisfaction, instant reaction, instant analysis, instant next step, right? So once you have to wait, you don't realize like, hey, if I would have waited a little bit longer here, maybe I would have learned something. But it's like, no, I'm not waiting. I'm moving on.
Right.
And like work-life balance, like if you're gonna work as much as somebody like me or somebody like you have to blend the two.
Yeah.
Right. It's not so cookie cutter, easy. Like this is my work life, this is my personal life. Like there's a blend. Like
I like to call it your life's work.
Yeah. 100%.
But if you choose something that you can show up to every day, that doesn't doesn't suck the soul out of you, but actually fills your soul.
100%.
I think it's just hard to find that thing.
So hard.
They call it self-actualizing, right? We're talking to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like you find your purpose, and when you find your purpose and you like it and you're recognized for it, like it energizes you.
Absolutely. And I think everyone's a little different as well. Like for me, like I have a family, right? I have 3 kids under 5 years old right now. So during the week, I try to work as much as I possibly can, right? So I work when I get up in the morning, I come home, I have dinner with my family and put my kids to bed, and then I go back to work, right? Because my kids are sleeping. I'm not wasting.
Did you say you get up and you go home?
No, I get up, I go to work.
I was like,
no, not that quick.
Right.
I get up, I go to work, I come home, have dinner with my family, put the kids to bed, and then back to work, whether it's on a laptop or I'm going somewhere. But I do that all during the weekday. So then weekends when my kids are home and hanging out, I try to spend as much time as I can on during that time. So like you have to blend that work-life balance. You got to figure out how your schedule works with your family schedule and how you can still be productive.
Right. And I think this is where relativity comes in. And I think the issue with the restaurant industry is relative to everyone else that's working in the restaurant industry. We're all such hard workers that working 7 days a week became normal.
Totally.
So we collectively as an industry, relative to ourselves, we're so unhealthy because we were just comparing ourselves to each other. But we also painted ourselves into this corner because collectively as an industry, we chose to focus on outworking each other than being smart with how we work.
100%.
Now we're getting smart, but there's still people that are willing to work 90 plus hours a week. And it's like, will you cut the shit? Like, can we all just collectively say, like, let's dial it back a little bit?
Well, I think that's the hardest transition to make is when you go from doing everything yourself to starting to learn to work smarter. So like you just want to muscle through it. Like I could just keep working, right? But then I don't have to think as much. I don't have to strategize. Like I'm just going to keep working because then I'm feeling productive because I'm actually doing something. But in reality, you need to take a step back and it's like, okay, how can I build a strategy? How can I actually plan and incorporate my team to help me accomplish this? Because the group as a whole is going to be a lot more efficient and faster than me trying to do this all by myself.
Right. So back to your timeline, 2013, you're not finding this work that fills your soul.
Not.
You're kind of just trying to keep the wheel spinning while you figure out what Ryan's meant for.
Yep.
What was that like? How did that feel?
It's not a good feeling, you know, because I wouldn't say I was lost, but you feel that at times. You're like, you're trying to find that purpose. This was before kids, right? I was married at the time, but like before kids, so you're trying to figure out what you want to do. And for me, like I've always been a guy who's set goals for myself and wanted to get to certain levels of my career. And I'm like, now I'm 27. I feel like I'm starting over because I just left what I've been doing for the past 5 years. Like now I have to start from scratch again.
What did that feel like?
Frustrating.
Yeah.
Super frustrating. I don't want to start this again. Like I already invested 5 years. I thought I was on my way to being, a top sports executive and, that didn't happen, So it was like, I had to start over. But like, that's, I think a key lesson is like, I don't care how old you are. Like if you're not happy in what you're doing, start over.
Yeah. Was there a dark time for you during this period or were you just kind of like instantly it's like, you know what, this sucks, but like just get after it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not the type of person who's like, doom and gloom. I wouldn't call it a dark time.
Yeah. Any anxiety attacks?
No, anxiety came much later in life. I have more anxiety.
I went through something similar, and like you're bringing back my anxiety. I did have anxiety attacks. I was also $200,000 in debt. When I, at the age of 27, resigned from aviation and went back to school for marketing and hospitality. Like I know what you're talking about. It's when you put so much time and effort into a path. And you feel like at the age of 27, you're so old, and like, how are you going to make a change this? Like invest money, time.
100%.
I totally get.
And I think that's what people have take out of it. Like if you're not happy, I don't care if you're 60, 25, 35. Stop doing what you're doing
because you're only going to waste more time.
You only get one life. Just change it.
Yeah,
figure it out. If your back's against the wall, you're going to figure it out anyway. So
I love that. So you decide to just pivot away from the sports. You take a for now job at Data Monitor, and then you weren't there long, 8 months. No. Then you go to Bizzo Account.
Yep.
Bizzo, which you were account executive. Was that more on the path of what you thought you wanted to do, or was it just better than what you were doing?
It was just better than what I was doing.
Okay.
I knew somebody who worked there. I hadn't worked in tech before. I was always a seller, right? I could sell. So I knew that was like my best path.
What makes you a good seller?
self-awareness. I always joke that I can go talk to the construction worker and sell him something, and then I can go talk to the CEO of Google and have a conversation with him and sell him something. So like that self-awareness and knowing your audience was always one of my better skills.
Being able to adapt to your
Being able to adapt 100%. So knowing that your messaging, and it's the same thing in like marketing today. You have to cater your messaging to whoever you're speaking to. So like that works in sales. It works in all aspects of life.
Right. Is that how you think it most serves you today? Is the marketing? Are you a big part of the marketing effort here at Bango Bills?
Yeah, absolutely. That's like where my passion went when I went to Bizzo. That was the first like true marketing company that I worked for. It was a tech marketing company. We did B2B display ads, right? Like not super sexy, but it started to shine a light on how technology is playing its way into marketing. This is before AI, before all this stuff. This was a company that was doing something pretty revolutionary at the time, so much so that LinkedIn acquired them, right? It was a very small tech marketing company. So that was like my first like eye opener. I was like, oh, this is actually really cool. Like this is legit strategy and thought process behind how we market. And that's what kind of started to get me excited.
So how do you think this experience most influenced who you are today?
I think it just put me on another trajectory, right?
Yeah.
Like I just wasn't happy. I changed things, and then going to Bizzo, which eventually led to LinkedIn, like that just sped up my career a lot from a mentality standpoint. Like I learned so much in that time period. I wasn't miserable anymore. When you're not miserable, you're a lot more open to learning, right? So that like just really sped things up as far as how I learned.
Quality of life better?
Way better.
As far as payment and all that
100%.
stuff? Yeah.
It's like money matters, like
to a point.
It matters when you're at that point.
Yeah.
When you're making X and you're like living in Manhattan and you could barely afford rent, like that's where it's like, okay, I just need a little bit more money to give myself like a reprieve that I don't have to like steal someone's cup of noodles.
I've heard the sweet spot, depending on where you live.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's relative to where you live, is between $70,000 and $100,000 a year.
Yeah.
In that $30,000 range. If you can get to that point, and you live a modest lifestyle, we were talking to James before this, and he mentioned just that not living like under, I can't remember the term he used, but basically choosing to live
below your means.
Yeah.
I think that is a sweet spot. Like it's one thing to go from 30 to 60, right? Like, okay, now it's getting a little bit more comfortable. But once you're at that 100 mark, like you said, like you don't need to go live like you make 500 because there's not a lot of extra stuff.
That new car is only going to make you happy the drive home from the parking lot.
100%.
After 100%. That, it's just another way to get to the job you hate.
Yeah. So you just got to find that sweet spot.
Yeah, exactly. So you're working for LinkedIn. Bizzo gets acquired by LinkedIn. What were you doing for LinkedIn? Did your job change, or were you just getting a different paycheck?
Same role. LinkedIn acquired Bizzo. We just moved over into their marketing department. They acquired Bizzo for a certain piece of technology. It was a B2B marketing platform. Obviously, LinkedIn's a massive B2B social platform. It was our ability to retarget. I'm not sure if you're familiar with retargeting. A little bit. So
if you land on a website, you get geotagged, and then that follows
100%.
Yeah.
But it was able to do is called multi-nurture platform. So not only did it know where you came on the website, it knew how much time you spent on certain pages, what you were looking at.
So you could segment further.
Exactly, which is way more normal, and that's like a normal thing today.
Yeah.
But at this stage, like
2015?
Yeah. Nobody was doing that.
I remember recording content like that was like the groundbreaking stuff
100%.
6 years ago.
100%. So nobody was doing that. So that was like totally next level.
Yeah.
Like I knew you hit this landing page. I knew you spent 5 minutes on there. I knew you got to the shopping cart. Like that tells me that person is super down the funnel, right? I'm going to send them a really high friction offer. I'm not going to just say, hey, thanks for coming. I'm going to say, hey, here's that product. Do you want to buy it?
Right. So if what we're talking about, if you're listening to this, like if you remember during like 2016-17 period, all of a sudden you would go to a website, you'd be looking at a brand new set of clubs, and then you'd go to another website like weather.com, and holy shit, there are those clubs I was just looking at.
Exactly.
The universe is speaking to me. They're telling me I must buy these clubs. What are the odds?
Yep.
It's such a coincidence. Now we know that that's not the case, that we're literally everything we do on the internet is being tracked, and that data is where they're making their money.
Exactly.
You are the product, people. Figure it out already. It's disgusting. Once you start going down these rabbit holes and you figure out how marketing works, you just want to like wipe your hands.
Yeah. It's all data driven.
Yeah, man. Anyway, I digress. So what's going on? How do you go from that to all of a sudden Bango Bowls?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So you I know you just had James on from Upstream. Me and James been friends for 30 years. We grew up together. Like, I'm only 37 now. Like, literally known him almost my entire life.
Yeah.
Been best friends for a really long time. So I'm watching him grow tap room to start with, right? At this point, they have 2 tap rooms. And I'm like, I'm making good money now, but I want to make more. I have this 9-to-5 job. Like, what else can I do to get to the next level? Okay, here's a little side hustle that I think we could try. I'm seeing this in the city. Nobody's really executing well. Nobody's making an acai bowl the way I think it should be made. Hey, James, sitting there having beers, like, just shooting the shit. It's like, hey, we should open one of these in the city. He's like, I want nothing to do with Manhattan. I'm like, okay. But then the more and more we talk about it, it's like, oh, I actually have this little storefront next to one of our tap rooms, and maybe we should try opening it there. So that's how, like, the initial conversation started.
Is that the second location?
First location. Our first location is Bango Bowls, Massapequa
But that
Park.
was the tap room second location.
Yes, I'm sorry. Tap room's second location. Correct.
Yeah. Okay, so you were the spark.
Yes.
Okay.
I was the one who was like, hey, we should start to look at this. And then,
acai bowls, generally speaking.
Correct.
So what was it about
nobody's
acai
really
bowls?
doing it. Like, there was one other guy in Long Island who was doing it, and I think they did a pretty good job. But I was like, they're not doing a good job branding. Yeah. I was like, we can brand this way better. We could build a whole company and a business and a brand around this.
What else was appealing to you about the idea of just focusing on acai? And at the time, it was just acai bowls, right?
Yeah, at the time, it was just that. I mean, the simplicity. Nothing goes bad. Fresh. Yeah.
Unless the freezer breaks.
Yeah, 100%.
Which is possible.
Very simple.
Get that insurance.
100%. And especially from James' side of view, he's used to running full service restaurants, so it's like totally different business.
Yeah.
And the startup cost is very low. It's
That's
like,
the other one. Yeah.
We could try this and see.
You are Kathleen Wood's dream come true. Because she loves focusing and putting all of your energy into doing a few things really well.
100%.
Yeah. So you have this idea that there's a huge gap in the market in New York City for acai bowls, which in 2016, 17 is really starting to gain traction in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That was like the beginning of it. Like, there was one guy on Long Island doing it, and that's why I was like, we could do this, so we could do it better than they're doing it.
Yeah.
So it just, opportunity was there.
So that space that was vacant, it was like, what, 400, 300 square feet?
Yeah, it's so small, like a closet.
What was there before?
There was like a little hardware computer store, like literally selling like desktops out of it. So it was an older guy. He was probably like 65, 70 years old. Definitely was like just waiting for somebody to say, hey, somebody give me 10 grand to get out of my space. So that's exactly what we did.
That poor lady had toilet paper hanging. I'm almost like tempted to go chase her down the street. Man, that would be too embarrassing for her and for me. Sorry.
All good.
Could not see that. Keep going.
Yeah. So
hardware.
Yeah. The computer hardware store, we literally went to the old guy and said, hey, we'd like to take your space. Will you give it to us? We'll give you $10,000. And he's like, yeah, sure. So literally that's how it went. He left, and that was all good.
Oh man, that's crazy. I think now's actually a really good time to take a break to thank our sponsors, and we'll be right back to talk about the process for starting this.
We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that right now, Restaurant Systems Pro is offering a no strings attached 60-day trial that will help you improve your systems, increase your profit, and find better work-life balance. All you have to do is click the link below.
All right, we're back, and you kind of laid it out for us. Like you're searching for your purpose in life, right? I'm curious, why the restaurant industry? Why would that give you what you felt like you were missing? There's so many different directions you could have gone to find what you were looking for, to make more money.
Yep.
Why did you think your answer was in restaurants?
2 things. One being food. Like, I am genuinely a food lover. Like, I think about food all day, every day.
Yeah.
Like, my wife makes fun of me because she she doesn't love food like I do. And I'm like, how do you not love food? I'll talk about it every conversation. Like if I'm sitting on the beach, I want to talk about sandwiches. Like I just, you know.
You remind me of my dad right now. It's like he won't even finish breakfast, and he's like, "What's for dinner?"
That's exactly how I am. Like I literally would start talking about the next meal while I'm eating my current meal.
Can we get through breakfast first, Dad?
No, because I love it. So food was a big part of it.
Yeah.
You know, it was like if I have to say I'm like passionate about anything, like I'm passionate about food. The other thing was the business side of it, right? So you gravitate towards your network or your friends, right? Like I have friends that are in the hospitality business. Most of my friends are in the hospitality business. Like it's funny, like we go away on a bachelor party, right? There's 15 of us. 10 of us are bar or restaurant owners, right? Like it's just who we hang out with. That's who we grew up with.
Man, we know how to have the most fun.
Yep, exactly.
So were there concerns about going to work with friends?
Everyone always asks that question, and I think you just have to have the right friends, right? Like we talked about.
I was totally baiting you, and I 100% agree.
Yeah. I totally agree. Like I couldn't do it with all my friends, and I don't recommend people do it with all their friends, but our friendship is an open and honest friendship. You know, it's like if you're doing something and I don't like it, I'm going to tell you. We're going to have a conversation about it, and then we're just going to get over it.
Right.
Same goes the other way. If I'm doing something, just talk to me. Let's be self-aware and let's get that feedback, right? And let's move in the right direction. And we won't agree all the time.
I know some people who say you need to be friends. I don't know. Like I would prefer to be friends with the people I go into business with because there's a reason why I'm friends with you. It's because I know, like, and trust you.
100%.
You know?
You definitely have to like somebody.
Yeah.
You know?
And I'm pretty particular about the friends I like to keep. You know, so if I'm going into business, I want somebody I know I can lean on and trust, and somebody I just know generally, so I don't have to learn your character flaws and the benefits of your character as well. But
100%.
like I know going into it, and something about family too. Like I feel like it's harder to walk away.
Yeah.
You know, and then when things get tough, you want something to keep you. You don't want to let people down.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I think it's the personality traits you have. Like you have to have that ability to not hold on to something. Like that's who I am. Like I always joked I love breaking chops, right? Like I love sitting in a circle full of guys and everyone just teasing each other, making fun of each other. That to me is like the best use of time because you see how witty people are, you see how quick they are, and it's genuinely funny, right?
Yeah.
So like you can't say anything that's going to hurt my feelings that my friend hasn't already made fun of me for at some point in my life. Like I'm cool with it, right? So like even if it is something towards business, like you're not going to hurt my feelings. Like I genuinely will take all feedback. I may not agree and do everything you say.
It's time for breakfast.
Yes, 100%.
I love that, man. So, yeah, I 100% agree. I think your odds of success are better if you go into friends and family. The trick is don't have shitty friends.
Yeah,
you can't choose your family.
That is a fact. You have. Everyone knows, oh, your friends. I'm like, yeah, I can't do it with every friend, but this group of friends with, I can do it with.
Right. So, so you convinced James. You call him Jamie?
I call him Jamie. Yeah.
I'll call him James.
You can call him most now that he's
getting
more professional. He goes by James.
So I was talking to James, and I mean, when you were talking to James, how did you convince him? Like, because it didn't sound like he was sold on it right away.
No, I think he was like, I don't know that this is the route I want to go. But the more we talked about it, we talked about that simplicity thing and that low startup cost were like two of the really big keys. Because at that time, he and Dave from the tap room, they were the operators, right? So like I was just the guy who came up with the name and did some back-end marketing, did some admin stuff while I still worked in the city. Like I still had a full-time job at LinkedIn, so like I wasn't going to deal with all the heartaches and the trouble that comes with day-to-day operations. So like really had to convince him to get to do it, to be like, okay, let's do it. It's going to be my problem really. Because at that point they had just 2 tap rooms. It was like, we could do this on top of it. Which we'll talk about the next stage a little bit down the line, but like at that point it wasn't too much of a burden to handle.
Well, my thought if I'm James is like this is very off brand for what we do. We're a tap room. Yeah. Like we serve beer, not stuff that makes you healthier. Yeah. And I think that when you think of acai bowls, you're thinking very health focused. Yeah. It's a health food.
Yeah. I think the one thing about Jamie is that he is a serial entrepreneur. Like people talk about like, were you always an entrepreneur? Like I always had like a little bit of an itch, but I wouldn't say I was always an entrepreneur. Like Jamie is always an entrepreneur. He was selling Excel phone plans in high school. Like he's the biggest entrepreneur I know. So he, at that point, like it was a new opportunity, a new business. It kind of got his wheels turning, started thinking about it. So it was like, okay, I want to, now that I've brought this challenge to him, he's like, I can do it.
He's going to see low risk, high potential return.
Yes, 100%.
So you convinced him to do this. What was the first step?
Find a place, right? Find a place.
You had the place, didn't you?
Yeah, we got the place. Well, first you got to say yes. Then we went and look for the place. We had to come up with a name and a plan.
So the place was right next door, the first location, right?
Correct.
Right, from his second tap room.
Correct.
What's the name of the town that's in?
Massapequa Park.
Massapequa Park.
Yep.
Where is that relative to here? Like 30 miles away?
No,
30
less
minutes?
than that. Maybe 15 miles, 20 miles. It's on the South Shore.
But like 30 minutes, right?
Yeah, about 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I remember him saying. 30 stuck out. So what was it about that area that you think made this acai bowl location a hit out of the gates?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great neighborhood area. It actually doesn't have like a lot of the things we look for now. Like, only has small street parking, really obviously a really small space. We can't fit half the stuff we do now, but it's a really good community.
Good foot traffic.
Yeah, good foot traffic, a lot of walk-ups, and like all the community comes to all the places on this one little strip. It's like a little downtown area, right? So like all the people who are coming into Tap Room for a burger and a beer, the next morning are coming to get an acai bowl at Bango Bowls. So
Got it.
It was definitely a great spot, like still is a great spot.
Got it. So what were the first couple weeks like?
Crazy. That's when we were like, all right, we got to light this thing up.
What is crazy? Give me an example. Can you share some numbers?
Yeah, I'll give you numbers. We opened, it was, I think, January 1st of 2017. There were 6 inches of snow on the ground, and we were doing $6,000 a day at a 350 square feet.
Holy shit. How many transactions is that?
A lot.
That's a lot.
I'm not going to pretend I could do the math in my head, but at 12,
and
at
how'd you
$10
get the word
a
out?
clip. What?
Did you just put a sign that said acai bowls?
Yeah, because nobody's really doing it. And people were coming in like, oh, I've been driving 30 miles, every day to get this. Like, what? It was like, because there's only one other person on Long Island doing it.
I needed to get my Instagram shot.
100%. 100%. And that's like when that stuff like just started to get big, So, yeah, it just kind of took off. And then we were like, okay, people are going to know about this. Like, we got to be pretty fast. Like, let's open some more.
Yeah. So how long did it take? So you're at 7 locations today.
Yeah.
It was only 8 months that you went from, correct me if I'm wrong, was it 8 months that you went from 1 Bango Bowls to 2 Bango Bowls?
Yeah, it's just about that. I think it was January to August we got the second one open.
So what happened in that 8-month period to get you, like, what did you tell yourself you had to do before opening location number 2?
We had to find second generation restaurants. That was like a key, the real estate piece of it. It's like, here on Long Island, building out restaurants from a health and permit standpoint and a grease trap. If you have to it's not like one of the under-counter grease traps. You got to like dig up the whole sewer system and $70,000 to put a grease trap in. Right. Which we were still pretty young at this time. Like,
you needed a grease trap for Bango Bowls?
100%.
Really?
Yeah. You had to in the event that you are food space and then the next food space does cook. Like, you have to be the first one to put the grease trap in. So super frustrating, but we were like, all right, we got to find a second generation restaurant that we can like do a quick flip on, right? That's only going to cost us $100,000 opposed to building a full service restaurant cost you $2 million, right?
Right. I am curious before we start talking about location number 2. So you said you did $6,000 in revenue the first day, January or something. Was it like that every day, or did it go up?
No, I mean, it continued for a few months. We were getting disbursement checks like literally in like the first 2 weeks of business. I was like, this can't be right. It was just really gangbusters, and that was in winter. Which the business at that point was.
So disbursement to your investors?
No, it's us. Like, we put all the money up ourselves, so we were already getting like checks back. Which usually first year of business, you're not going to get a check back right away, a profit check back right away.
So you start working with the CFO instantly.
Yeah.
Okay. Most people aren't even that far ahead. They're just like, let's just open and start making money. And we're getting cash, we're putting it in our pocket every night. And then you're like, where's the money for taxes?
Yeah, 100%. So we've been there a few times too. So.
So I'm just curious, like $6,000 a day. You probably don't need that many people. Definitely don't need skilled people because you're really just scooping.
Yeah.
There's no like technical.
No, I mean, all high school, college kids, definitely not skilled labor. We have no line chefs, no cooks.
So how many employees would you have working?
I mean, at that point, we probably had somewhere between like 6 and 8.
Okay, but you're doing volume, so
volume.
Yeah. So, can you serve like 6 to 8 people at a time? Like, how? Like, is it just one
One station, one setup. So like max people you could have working together is like maybe 2 to 4.
What's the ticket time on something like that?
2.5 minutes.
2.5 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you want to get into it now, but like one of our key differentiators is how we prepare our acai and how fast it can get out.
So is that proprietary?
Yeah.
Okay, so the process, nobody else can prepare their acai like this.
They can figure it out, but
you can't tell us.
Yeah, I don't know if I can share it with this audience.
Yeah, right. But I mean, I'm just thinking like, because like I think the most expensive thing for you is probably cost of goods, because I know acai isn't cheap, especially over the past 6 years, because there's a spike in demand.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
So that's probably your biggest operational expense, I'm assuming.
No, I mean
costs?
we've gotten
Rent,
we've gotten it down. And all those things are pretty good. Like rent's not bad.
Small space.
Yeah, small space.
You're not having people sit down for an hour and a half and enjoying their acai bowl.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, it's probably grabbing
95% takeout. So all relatively small spaces.
Yeah. So I see the appeal. I see why James is like, okay, let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
Right. So you're before we went down this little rabbit hole, you were starting to tell me what you had to do to get number 2 ready for launch.
Yep.
But you guys tapped the brakes a little bit. You didn't go that fast.
I mean, 8 months opening a brand new restaurant is actually is pretty fast.
I think you told me you guys were slowing down for something. Maybe they came later.
Maybe it came later.
I don't always get the privilege
the
of talking
picture?
to the holding company CEO before talking to the second CEO. So just kind of take that train of thought of like what was going on, the next challenges, how you overcame that.
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to open a second one, right? So, okay, let's find a piece of real estate that works for what we want to do. Okay, who's going to run it? How are we going to run it? Do we need to get a general manager? Is this one going to be bigger than the last one? Like all those questions when you're evaluating a business that you run through. A lot of things based on feel, like to where we are today.
Right.
Where a lot of things data-driven and like, okay, we do
everything I do is based off feel right now. I get it.
We have like a true evaluation system where back then it was like, hey, this looks like a good spot. Let's give it a go.
Yeah. So, what were your biggest challenges going from the tech world to service?
I mean, at this point, it wasn't that bad because I was still working that 9 to 5. I hadn't made that transition yet.
Okay.
So I was still, I did a lot of the admin stuff. I knew the back end POS really well. I knew all the marketing stuff. I handled social media, all that type of stuff. But like that was,
So you're just side hustling. So you're going to your full-time job, maybe guilty of doing a little bit of work while on the clock.
Yep, 100%. 100%. I mean, that honestly is like when I knew that I had to go. Yeah. When I couldn't focus on my work that was actually paying me, to be there 9 to 5. I couldn't focus on that any longer because I was now like just completely consumed with thinking about how to grow this other business.
Did you guys have a benchmark of like, this is what we need to do with revenue from Bango Bowls before we can justify Ryan you coming on full time?
No. I mean, honestly, thinking back to like where we were to where we are now and like our financial visibility and all that, the things we're concentrating on now, we were just kind of kids shooting from a hip, but we were always risk takers, right? Like that's what kind of got at least me here. Like I'm not afraid of a risk. I'm not afraid to start over. So I was always wanting the next challenge, and this Bango Bowls was kind of that next challenge.
Yeah. Where was Bango Bowls when you did end up ultimately leaving your full-time thing?
I think we had 4 locations at that point, between 3 and 4. Maybe we had 3 and we were opening a 4th. But like Taproom was growing at the same time as well. So like that's when we started to see like the quality started to go down in what we were doing. And that's because everyone was just getting spread too thin.
Right.
Everyone had too much on their plate. We also, at that point, like we also started to see our sales start to level off, right? Like now we're not in hyper growth mode anymore, and this is kind of where we're going to be. And we were like, hey, if we're going to grow this concept, we need X revenue to be able to really scale this thing. So now let's take a step back, and everything we do from this point, we want this goal of this revenue, and we're going to build the business based on trying to hit that goal.
How did you come to that goal, that X number?
We looked and evaluated other businesses, saw what other people are doing on average unit volume, and thought, hey, if we're, we looked at our P&L. It's like,
you're looking at other acai bowl concepts?
Similar concepts, yeah.
Okay.
Similar competitive concepts. And we're looking at our P&L, seeing how much money we're making. It's like, hey, like we can make a little money doing this, but like, do we want to invest all this time and energy in really trying to scale this thing, to 100 stores for example, if there's not that much left, So that's when we were like, okay, we don't think that this number is going to be okay. Like we want to get to $1 million, right? Like, so if we're going to hit $1 million, let's work backwards. How many customers at a day? How many items we have to sell, and what are the items, right? And that's when we pivoted to, we're not just an acai bowl concept. We're a better for you brand that focuses on salads, acai bowls, smoothies, paninis, and much more.
So why was focusing on that other stuff the trick to getting the revenue?
Diversity in the menu. A lot of people are afraid of it, but we really wanted to attack that veto vote. We wanted to say, hey, if you're coming to the restaurant and your wife wants an acai bowl, you want a salad, and the
that
kid
protein, you want that protein,
and somebody wants a poke bowl, like, we want to be able to get all three of those people into our restaurant, right? We have 3 day parts. We take advantage of that.
And there are 3 healthy verticals.
100%.
So you have like sweet tooth, like smoothie frozen goodness. You have the vegan, vegetarian option, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have the healthy, but with the protein.
Yeah. One of the big things we focus on is the fact that we put as much emphasis on the health benefits as we do the flavor. Like we've done some marketing campaigns where it's like salt and pepper. Hell yeah, we use it. Like, we're not that far right, all organic, like no seasoning, tastes like cardboard. Yeah. We're not. That's not who we are. We're a blend of, hey, it's got to taste good and it's got to.
And there might be a little bit of sodium, but you know what? Drink some water. All right,
100%.
Balance that shit out. So. Was this when you're talking about kind of like, hey, this is where we want to be and let's reverse engineer it, was that pre or post Kathleen Wood?
That was very pre Kathleen Wood.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how pre are we talking?
Years. Probably like 2 to 3 years. We've been working with Kathleen for about 2 years now.
Okay.
Taproom, been working with her a little bit longer, but Bango specifically, about 2 years.
So you guys are having this conversation like 2 years in. You're 14 months deep with your second Bango Bowls location.
Yep.
How many locations are you at this point, 2 years in?
I think we had 3 with maybe a 4th under construction.
So only 3 less than you have currently.
Correct. Like, we were going fast, probably a little too fast, right? That's another.
What made you think you were
learning.
going too fast? What happened?
Because I would say we didn't understand the full model yet. Like, we didn't even have a full model, right? Like, we started as an acai bowl company. We were transitioning to this better for you, diverse menu concept, right? And like, now our footprints are a little bit different. Our prototype's a little bit different.
So you're going through puberty right now.
Yeah, 100%.
You're growing, you're changing, but you don't know what quite's going on yet.
Exactly.
You don't know how it's going to finish.
Exactly. And when you try to steer a ship moving, like, it gets very hard, right? So that every new unit you bring on,
the bigger you get, the harder it gets.
100%. So like, now we have a lot more elements to it. So now, at that point, okay, we want to tweak this, we want to tweak that. Now you're not opening new stores. You're like kind of going backwards and fixing things and making things better.
Yeah. What team did you have at your disposal at this time? Because it wasn't just you and James. James had his group of experts, right? He had a back of house guy.
Yep.
David, was it?
Yeah.
There was David, but there was also some other name that was unique, like an M name.
Mikey Nick,
maybe.
I don't know. I'm not sure who he's using.
But like, I guess you weren't solely responsible for developing the recipes, is where I'm going with this.
Not at that stage.
So you had access to a team of people who were collectively working on
we were messing with it. Like I said, I was always like the food guy, and I'm not a trained chef by any means. I just like to eat. I always say I'm a glorified at-home cook. But yeah, just like, once I get on something, it's like in my head. So I'll go and I'll make something like 3,000 times till it's perfect, till I feel like it's good. Then I bring it to them and say, hey, let's taste this.
So something that comes up often is shared vision and making sure you have it. Was that a challenge for you guys? Because did you have different ideas of where this thing should go? Was there a conflict of vision at any point?
No, I don't think so. I think, we all knew, like, we started it in one place, and then it was like, okay, if we want to grow it to this, we need to pivot. What are other...
And this was the X number you were going for.
Correct.
You threw out $1 million, but that was just a random number.
Yeah. So $1 million was the number.
Okay. So
that was where we were trying to get to.
$1 million gross.
Yeah.
Per location.
Correct.
Got it.
So then it was like...
Is that weird for you to talk about?
No.
Okay.
So that was the goal, right? So then we, like we said, we reverse engineered it. It's like, okay, what are the other items that we think will resonate with what we're doing? And then we built it that way.
So you knew it needed to be volume, and that certain people weren't coming through the door because it was the voting. Like if 2 out of 3 people didn't want acai bowls, then
we also did it in iterations, right? Like, we were never cooking when we were just an acai bowl concept, right? So now we're bringing in other food, but we still don't have any cooking equipment. So now we're getting pre-made chicken, serving it cold, but pre-made shrimp, serving it cold.
You only do that for so long. It's better.
The quality's
than
just not there.
Yeah.
So it's like we did that for 6 months. We're like, now the quality is going down of our brand and our concept. Like, if we want to move forward, like, we need to figure out a technology or solution that we can bring some sort of cooking technology in here and make this a scratch kitchen.
Right. So what was that? What were the challenges associated with that?
Footprints, cost, menu, design, the whole thing.
How'd you keep the cost down of putting in more equipment?
Yep.
What'd you have to do to keep the cost down and manageable? Because you, like you pointed out, you're not really hiring like executive chefs.
No, not at all. We really just had to find the right piece of equipment, right?
What was that?
We use a Rationale.
I already knew the answer. But I was just curious if you had something different to say.
No, we use a Rationale combi oven, which is the best thing ever invented for cooking ever, in my opinion. You could literally cook anything a million different ways.
Well, yeah, the cool thing is it's programmable. So, like, you have how many recipes for protein here? I'm guessing no more than 10?
Less than that, 3.
3.
And they're all pretty, salt, pepper, olive oil, like, straightforward.
So the prep is probably pretty straightforward, right? Follow these this recipe. And then the process of cooking becomes just as simple as another item on the recipe.
Absolutely.
You put it in the oven, you push the button, and the machine knows exactly what to do.
Cooks it perfect every time.
Yeah.
I think the key was once we were getting more diverse, it was like, okay, we need to keep it simplified, though, right? So everything we put on the menu, we tried to do in 3 steps, and that's still true to this day. And I'd be lying if I said everything is 3 steps, but that's kind of the methodology behind it. We try to get everything in 3 steps, right? So as you're building, it's not getting too complex, right? So the first question I always get is, oh, you have all this diversity, you have all these different things. It's probably a really tough operation. Like, our claim to fame is we have a diverse menu with a simplified operation. The focus is on the prep because the technology does the rest. So as long as we're prepping the right amounts and we're prepping them correctly, the technology will execute for us and make sure that we can spend our time on guest service, right? So then we can get our customers coming back every day.
I love that. I feel like I still want to talk about the Rationale.
Me too. I can talk about Rationale all day.
Because it's not just the consistency that is huge, and the biggest challenge when it comes to preparing proteins is keeping it consistent, but it's also cooked with steam, right? So I know that you get a much higher yield. You're not losing, there's not waste dripping out of the meat, and the other thing I think is the energy, it doesn't take a lot of energy and power bills.
I mean, it's an electric, it's self-venting.
It's cooking mostly with water, steaming it, right?
Yeah, it's a combi oven, so it uses both convection and steam. Yeah, but you can control those to whatever you'd like. Like we did a falafel LTO a few years ago, right? So like, you want the steam to provide some of that moisture. Like if you're frying, right, you want the steam to provide some of that moisture, but you need the convection to make it crispy, right? So we literally had to dial in. And it was like, okay, we're going to do 53% steam, 47% convection, and we kept tweaking that to make the perfect piece of falafel.
Right. I used to kind of be very anti these things. I'm not going to lie. Yep. When I was more naive, when I was just starting the podcast, I was like, every restaurant should cook over open fire, and the loss of the art of cooking. It's expensive.
Very expensive.
To run those types of restaurants. And I think the pragmatist in me is not every restaurant can do that. Yeah. Literally meaning there isn't enough market space for every restaurant to be charging those that amount just to be able to have somebody who's skilled enough to manage a fire, to keep consistency of the product. Yep. You know, so that's just one little thing. It's a big marketplace and there's room for all of us. So that's kind of what kind of broke my habits of thinking everything had to be, technique, James Beard type of cooking. And
I mean, there's room for both, right?
Exactly.
Not to say there's not room for those things as well, but
I almost feel
as convenience becomes more a part of your life, it's okay, we can't be James Beard for everyone's lunch where everyone needs to get their food in 30 minutes.
That's one of the reasons why I love Danny Meyer so much is because I think he's when he first, most people when they get into the industry, they're just filled with piss and vinegar, right? They're we're going to do everything from scratch the hard way. And then they get into it and they start doing it and they execute it. And I literally, if I want to scale, if I want to provide fiscal responsibility, security to my people, I need to do something else. Yeah. Bring in Shake Shack, that's his cash cow. you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, but like I think more and more restaurant operators need to be able to get outside their little bubble of like what they think the right way is, and accept that there's so many different ways.
Yeah.
And the true restaurateur looks at all the ways and looks for gaps, and knowing the market well enough and knowing the trade well enough to say there's an opportunity here if I'm willing to adapt.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I think sometimes you have to take, you know, for those who are all food focused, you have to take your chef hat off and then put your business owner hat on. Like there has to be a blend of the two. Like, it, you know, not to say that some of these 5-star Michelin star places, you know, they hold a certain standard, but they're different on their different category, right?
Only
like,
a certain percentage of our population can support those restaurants, you
exactly.
know, and they have their place, like you said.
Yeah. And that's like you said, only a certain amount of people. Like our concept, the diversity of the menu, we're trying to attract more people, right? More people who want to eat better for themselves.
Right.
Right. And conveniently.
Right. And like you can still do sustainable type focused cooking and use technology. I mean, there are ways to abstain the integrity without sacrificing quality of food and, you know, the environment and stuff.
Absolutely.
Like that, you know?
I mean, we still make all of our dressings are made in house.
Yeah.
All of our proteins are seasoned in house. Like, you know, we're still doing all those things. We're just using a quicker and more efficient technology to cook those.
Okay. So I think what got us down this rabbit hole is we were talking about the challenges of, you know, of realizing that you needed to offer more if you wanted to get to your goal of 1 million per location.
Yep.
So you said we need to, you know, diversify our menu. Oh crap, if we're going to do this, we need to lean on technology so we can keep our labor expense down. I think that's where we left off.
Yeah.
So what else?
And this is kind of like where I transitioned to be like, okay, now we're going to take this to the next level. Now somebody needs to truly lead this business. And that's when we had a conversation as a group and said, I'll do it. I wanted to. So
that's when you left your full-time job to be the CEO of Bango Bowls.
Yeah.
What was that transition? Excuse me, that transition like?
Difficult. You know, when I was at LinkedIn, I did pretty well. Very comfortable, you know. So the hardest part was the conversation with my wife, probably.
These are the fun, like this is the stuff that you don't talk about on the 45-minute podcast.
Yeah,
like,
100%.
How do you navigate those waters? Hey, babe, you know, all the security that I spent time, you know, I had a career change. I built this up again.
I was finally on a really good
third
track.
change coming up here.
Yeah. I mean, she knows me. Like I said, we've been together since we were 15 years old. Like,
so she was locked in.
She was locked in. She wasn't going anywhere. We were living in the city at this point. We both wanted to move back to Long Island. We wanted to sort of raise a family. So I was like, this is the opportunity. I could take something and we can grow it. And my thing with being at LinkedIn, like I was a career sales professional. The most I can go was capped. To a degree, right? Like, okay, if I want to make $300,000, like great living, like I'm not saying that's not unbelievable amount of money to be making, but like that was my cap.
How far does that go in Manhattan?
not as far as you think, to be honest. But like I was like, I don't want to be limited. Like I think I could do more, and I want the ability to do more, and I want to drive to that more. So like this is my opportunity to go lead an organization and take everything I've learned, especially in regards to scale and growth, right? Like LinkedIn is at one point is the fastest growing company in the world. Like I'm going to use this and I'm going to apply it to this food concept that I genuinely love and care about.
So how did you apply it?
Basic stuff. Like I always say this, like there's some basic things like having a mission statement, like simple, but if you don't have that vision and you have a singular vision with your entire team, like then there's no captain, right? So like simple things like having a mission statement, how to run a meeting, you know, how to organize things, how to have divisions, you know, like marketing, HR, like how to segment that stuff, how to use communication within a company that's effective, you know, like basic things.
Dude, you're jacking me up right now because I agree 100% with you. And I feel like there's so many resources out there that are like, here's how you set up a schedule, which is super important to know how to do. Here's how you read a P&L. Here's how you take inventory and all that stuff. Don't get me wrong, is super important stuff. Like the step systematical things that you need to do to control. You need those systems.
Yeah.
But the things we don't talk about, here's how you become a better leader. Here's how you understand your emotions and why you need to understand your emotions and communicate your emotions and be receptive to what people say to you. And like, that's the kind of stuff like, or the cash flow management or systems, like you said, for communicating. like that's where I think people go wrong in the restaurant industry. Like it's the communication, it's the little things, it's the foundational stuff that just you don't see consistently across all concepts.
I mean, 99% of problems in any business are based on communication.
So
right?
what is your process for communication?
We use
Systems.
We use a few different things. We use Slack. I am an avid Slack user. I have any business I have any interest in, literally anything. My whole life runs on Slack. It's organized. It is how I communicate. If somebody in the restaurant texts me, I will not answer. Like, they have to Slack me, because then I know it's organized. I know I can go find it. I'm not scrolling through text messages trying to find a file. Like, it has to be in Slack, and that's the way we communicate as an organization, and everyone knows that.
Yep. What about communication in person?
Yeah.
Do you have like standard, like, did you learn about meetings and how to host meetings? And
100%.
Like, what does that look like? How often do you guys meet? What do your meetings look like?
I think it's changed over a period of time, right? Like, as you get a little bit larger and you have more infrastructure, it starts to become a little bit more structured, right? Like, in the beginning, when I was the operator, it was pretty much myself and all the GMs, right? So it was much more like on the fly. Like, I'm coming to the store, we're going to sit down, we're going to talk about these.
The meeting was prep in the morning.
Yeah.
You're standing shoulder to shoulder.
Exactly.
Talking.
While we talked about
the
their
muscle
cost of
memory
goods.
is going at it, and you're talking about everything else. Yeah.
Exactly. So it changes over time, but like, that's part of the evolution of your business, and part of growth is knowing when those things need to change and who now needs to be in those meetings and who we need to motivate in certain ways. And that's where, like, it comes back full circle to we talked about marketing. It's like, okay, marketing is one-to-one communication, right? And that's what I learned early on, but so is relationships. Like, you can't blanket.
So one-on-one marketing, which is direct mail marketing essentially, right?
No, I mean, any type of marketing is one-on-one marketing. Like, we're now using email marketing to talk one-to-one to customers.
Because you're getting the segmentation, you're drilling down the
exactly
those lists, so you know how to tailor the message.
And it's the same way to manage, right? Like, you have to talk one-to-one. You can't blanket manage. You could have one unified goal, which is super important, but the way you have to communicate with your employees is a little bit different based on each personality. Yeah,
I won't lie. I was fishing here a little bit. I was hoping you would talk about some type of way of organizing in, like, your annual meetings, your quarterly meetings, your weekly meetings. Do you have things like this?
Yeah. So we're I would say we're newer to this. We're getting a lot better, where we're having meetings about our financial visibility, and we're really having structured cadence. But again, our team is new.
To my point, you're at, as a restaurant group, 10 locations.
Yep.
And I'm not like saying you're doing anything wrong. I think this is standard. It's usually to the point. It waits to the point where you have to start doing something, right? Mm-hmm. But my message is, like, a lot of people, like, you're implementing this stuff now. My goal is to get everyone who's listening to this, who's at one location, to realize that now is the time to start doing this. Because it's easier to do it now than wait until we get to 10 locations and then have to, like, roll out all these new processes.
Well, it's a tricky balance, right?
Right.
As you get more locations, you get more revenue, and then you can use new softwares, and you could have other things that are nice when you have infrastructure. So you can't just have one unit and say, oh, I'm going to use this, and this. Absolutely, you want to start thinking about it, but there is an evolution, and you have to run some things parallel. Right? You have to be like, okay, when we get to this stage, I'd like to implement this, because now the business can support that.
Right. So the one thing I'm really excited about recently, I'm just going to go out and say it so I can get it out already, is I learned about from Big Grove Brewery, which is based out of Iowa City. Okay. They mentioned it. I know I'm excited to talk to Death & Co. about this, because I know they use it. It's called EOS, and it stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And it was delivered by Traction, Gino Wickman. I don't know if you've heard the book Traction.
I read it.
So he talks about EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, but within that is the framing for annual and quarterly and weekly meetings. And I just don't think that's something that's common within the industry, where we have these scheduled meetings and we set up time to communicate and time to resurface our 10-year goal. Right. And I was talking to James about this, and I know that Kathleen came in and she helped do this again 2 years ago.
Yep.
But these tools, these resources are out there. And I think that if you can start with one location and you start these habits, you'll get to 5 locations much faster, because it's having those things baked in when you're small that helps you get faster, because you're forcing these things to communicate.
That I absolutely agree with.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree with. Yeah. And it's just, as you grow, you start to learn a little bit more, and it's like, okay, now we need to implement this. It's all done in stages. Like it's not, it's not that segmented. It's all
you don't know until you know.
Exactly.
And you got to figure out.
And you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
So until you go find somebody who can help you.
Yeah. No, I totally get where you're coming from, man. I don't disagree one bit. It doesn't happen all at once, right? And hopefully with your story and James' story and the thousands of people that came before you, that we can help people who are small today see this stuff so they can get that security faster.
Yeah, I think the moral of like what we just talked about is like, hey, like seek help, find other resources, find other restaurateurs, listen to podcasts like this and learn about what other people are doing, because that's where you're going to learn about what the next step is.
And listen, how did you start this? Consider criticism? No. Breakfast?
Feedback is breakfast champions.
Right, that's true. That doesn't really tie in. I guess I was a little bit of a reach there. But what else in terms of the scale of Bango Bowls, where you are now today, 7 locations? Take us to where we last left off, where you're talking about diversifying, you're adding system, communication. What else?
Yeah, I mean, we've added a bunch of things. So when I first took over as CEO, I think that's kind of where we are. It was about improving what we're currently doing, right? And that's where that pause kind of came in. It was like, okay, now I think we were up to 5 locations, maybe 4 locations, getting to a 5th. And that was when it was like, okay, now we're going to get to $1 million, right? That's our goal. These are some of the technologies, cooking-wise, product-wise, this is what we need to do. So we now have to go back and change all the systems and process and reteach, hire better people, right? Like, and that process took a little while, right? So it was like, okay, now we're getting our AUVs up. We're doing really well.
What's an AUV?
Average unit volume.
Got it.
So now we're getting those up, and we're starting to get in a place where, okay, these stores are starting to become, pretty profitable. The business is looking good. What is our next step from a growth standpoint? And at this point, we were working with Kathleen. I was probably in the CEO role for maybe 3 years. And we decided that our next stage of growth is going to be through franchising.
So I'm curious about, what is it exactly that I'm curious about? How do I hone this in? So it seems like you do marketing really well, and that was a big part of your success. Because you guys mentioned that there was a point where you were kind of floundering, where you didn't quite know what the next move was, and you saw that business actually went down a little bit. Yep. Right? Was it marketing, bringing that marketing in-house, that really helped turn that around, or was it just refining the product? What do you think it was that got you to your unit locations were doing all, like, what were the biggest changes you made?
Honestly, I always say, every time I have a conversation with somebody, like, the restaurant business is pretty simple, right? It is great product, it is a clean restaurant, and it is great guest service, right? So, like, everything has to be broken back down to that. So, like, if you want to make a better restaurant, you should only focus on those 3 things, right? And everyone should know that. And those 3 things every day should be the most important things. Yeah. If you do those 3 things, the restaurant will grow, and that's when things like marketing come into it to help get more.
I'm happy you're saying this, because I say it a lot too. I agree 100%. Like, I think people, they think, oh, like, we can do better. I think they put their energy out, going, hey, like, you go look for more business over here. Over here, you hire somebody to improve your SEO over there. And if you just took the time to put that energy in to do what you're already doing, but you figure out how to do it better, that means better service, more efficient, better margins, tighten things up. You have systems, but they could probably be better.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't scale. Shitty food and bad service.
Right. And you keep doing that until you can't squeeze any more liquid out of the rock. Like, okay, this is tight. And then but what happens is, if you put the energy in, by the time you're ready to turn back around to put it out, you don't have to, because you're keeping people around. Yeah. So I think we can fast forward. You're doing all these things to tighten things up, to get clarity on the vision, to get clarity on the culture, to improve your communication, to increase your margins and increase revenue. And you're saying to yourself, we need more help. Let's go hire help. Yeah. What was that conversation like?
At that point, I was doing everything myself. We had X amount of stores, so we had no infrastructure really. It was literally GMs, shift managers, team members, CEO. Right. So, like, nice title, but, like, I'm not a CEO.
I'm the owner.
I'm literally warrior just running around helping put out fires, right?
Yeah.
And if you want to get to that next stage, like you can't just be putting out fires. You have to plan, you have to prioritize, and you have to actually put things in place, right? So that was when it was like, if we're going to grow this more, we need infrastructure.
Right.
We need more people focusing on what is going to get us to the next level.
Got it. Before we start talking and really unpackaging what you learned about what that looks like, and for you, that vehicle is franchising.
Mm-hmm.
But before we unpackage that, I am curious about your relationship with James.
Yep.
Were you an equity partner from day one? Did you put, like, how did that work out?
With Bango Bowls?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
yeah.
did you put in money up front?
Yep.
And how did you guys structure that?
Smaller percentage, because I was only doing back end stuff. I wasn't the operator, right? So like,
percentage of equity in the business.
Correct.
Got
it. So we broke all that up and right when we started based on like what we were going to be doing, right? Like we kind of laid all that out. Like, okay, we know you have a full-time job. Like this is what we expect of you. Those guys are the operators. They got the bigger piece of the puzzle, right? Like completely understood, transparent, all good. That changed when I decided to say, hey, I'm going to leave my job and then come over, and now I'm going to be the CEO. So then there was an equity transfer.
So you guys have been friends for a long time. So was it just like a handshake?
Yeah. At that point it was 100%. Again, we've known each other forever. I don't know if I recommend always doing that, but like that was our relationship.
I mean, what would you recommend if you didn't have that level of friendship? Like,
I mean, you always want to have a standard operating agreement in place. You
Right.
want to have at least some level of attorney, just kind of draw that up.
Right.
So at least you have something that kind of show, that you could reference and say, hey, this is what we signed up for. This is what we're doing. This is your percentage. And that may change time, over time. And then you have to write a new operating agreement. But you always want to have something in place that kind of guides.
Right. Get a lawyer involved.
Yeah.
Right. And I love the model of, what they're doing with Eat, Drink. That's the other restaurant I'm trying to get on the show. Somebody to represent Eat, Drink, and Be Merry out of New York. I talked to their sister business in Charleston, and their whole model is, hey, like, you want to become a partner? Okay, well, let's get an EBITDA of this restaurant, find out its true value. And okay, it's valued at $1 million.
Yep.
For 1%, $10,000, you can become a partner and you own 1% of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they bring on partners. But they start where they can, right? So you start at 1%, but then as time goes, you're putting money away, you can buy another point and another point until you're out there opening restaurants, because you're generating wealth from this restaurant group, just like the original founders are.
Yep.
I think that's a good way to do it. I think you should buy in, because if you're going to put money up, but here's 1% is way more attainable for people trying to get in than
absolutely
50%.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere.
Right.
Absolutely.
But it's something, and it's skin in the game, and it's money up front to weed out the people who aren't truly interested.
Yeah, I think all of us we're definitely believers in, like, if you're going to get in, you got to put some money up, because you got to have skin in the game as well. Got it.
So that was what the partnership looked like when you chose to come on full time.
Yep.
Any other advice about what that, like, transitioning into a business or swinging more into a business?
No, I mean, I was ready to go for me, myself. I was ready to go, and I was already, like, immersing myself in it. So, like, it was almost a relief once I left my other job, because it was like, oh, I don't have to have two jobs now. I just have this one, that I'm super focused on. So, no, it was just, it was a smooth transition for me. The harder transition was immersing myself into the management, like getting to know the general managers.
What was hard about that?
I mean, now I'm a guy that is not the operator, coming in from outside, and I'm going to change things.
Now you're the boss.
Yeah, I'm going to change some things, because how we're doing it right now is not good enough, right? So going from, I don't want to say absentee management, but like James and the other guys were growing tap room, right? So like they couldn't be there all the time. So our general managers were like really like owning their stores, and sometimes they needed more support, and it's not their fault. Like, they didn't have the direction or the help that they needed. And because of that, like, some bad decisions are made, or wrong decisions. So we had to get in there, and we had to tweak it, and we had to fix some things.
What advice do you have for moving in in a leadership role like that, and kind of like displacing the previous leader?
You have to be cognizant of how people feel, right? Be self-aware of who you're dealing with, and understand that everyone's a little different. And you have to help them understand why you're doing things the way you are. Don't just come in and do it. Help them find the vision, and that help them see what you see, the reason you're doing this is to make this better. If we make this company better, this will happen, right?
Got
So
it.
like find out what motivates each individual person and then get them on that track.
How do you find out what motivates each individual person?
Listening.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. And I'm giving another pitch to that workshop we're doing.
Yep.
3 days away when you're listening to this. Kathleen Wood is the author of What Is It Costing You Not to Listen? She knows her shit. It's a workshop you do not want to miss. RSVP right now. All right. So moving forward, let's talk about where are you today? I think Kathleen's been helping you over the past 2 years.
Yep.
Where are you today?
Where are we today? We have 7 corporate locations, one of which we're sitting in right now. We actually just built this out in December. So we just opened this location and one other in New Hyde Park, about 20 minutes down the road. That one was built in April. So now we just got to 7 corporate locations. And we are actively franchising the concept starting this past June. So June 1st was our first announcement that we are now accepting franchisees.
Congrats, dude.
Yeah, thank you.
That's awesome. Where were you 2 years ago?
Not here. I just started working with Kathleen, right? So honestly, for me, like the most transformational 2 years of my entire life are probably these last 2 years.
How did you transform?
Working at it, you know, like really
personally,
both. You know, I went from being the operator where I was doing everything every day to having to build a team, lead a team, organize a team, and help plan for a team, and then help keep everyone accountable on that team. So that's like been one of the hardest transitions of my career, because I've always been able to muscle through everything, right? I've always, like, change doesn't scare me, right? I'm just going to put my head down and I'm going to run through the wall and we're going to figure this out.
Right.
Like, but this is the first time that I cannot muscle through it, and I have to learn new ways to lead a team.
Why can't you muscle through it?
Because it's just not enough. Like, you just can't do it yourself. So you need, you know, we talked about the speed of a team and why all those pieces matter. It's like understanding how those pieces fit into the puzzle and how we get everyone to work together.
So what's the hard part of that for you? Is it visualizing how it all comes together, or is it the keeping people accountable?
It's honestly every piece of it for me, you know, like, because I'm going through it right now.
So what are those pieces? It's the building it out and knowing how everything fits together,
Yep.
right? We've identified in that. You mentioned holding people accountable.
Yep.
Did you say delegating?
Yeah, delegating. Delegating's got to be the hardest thing.
Why is
ever.
that hard for you?
Because you have to consciously say, okay, I could do this right now myself and it'll take me 20 minutes, or I can take 15 minutes to explain to somebody else. Like, screw it, I'm just going to do it myself. It's only going to take an extra 5 minutes. But then guess what? Next time you got to do it, that's another 20 minutes, another 20 minutes, instead of somebody on your
So
team.
taking the 15 minutes longer now is an investment
Correct.
of your time for
Correct.
the future.
And you have to train your mind to do that. Like me specifically, like I've always, like, I'll just work harder, right? I'll stay up later and I'll get this done at some point. But then I become the bottleneck. Now the company is not moving fast enough because everything needs to come through me.
Right.
Like, I need to get out of the way, and I need to hire people who are better at these things than I am and let them do what they were hired to do.
Right.
Right. And as a leader, you just have to make sure that the vision and the goal is all aligned, and then we're staying accountable to what we all agreed on, what the vision and the goal is.
So the hard part, knowing how it fits together, we identified the narrative, the self-narrative you've told yourself for why it's better to delegate. In terms of holding it all together, how have you improved in that front?
Basic things like building a priority list and sticking to those priorities, right? Like, we work on only having 3 priorities.
Were you not a list person 2 years ago?
I'm a list person, but I'm just a complete list person.
So it just gets on the list.
Just dump it on, and I'll just keep checking it off.
So what's different about your list today?
Now I prioritize that list.
What's that
There are
look
things that are on the bottom of the list that don't matter right now, and I can't let them come into my mind because they don't matter right now. You know, the 3 priorities are the 3 priorities, and we have to stick with those. And every day we wake up, we need to make sure the team knows what the priorities are and are all working on those priorities.
Yeah. There's a book out there. It's called Eat That Frog. I think it's by Brian Tracy.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I got the author right, but he talks about it's a book on productivity. It's like, how do you eat a big frog?
Yeah.
One
bite at a time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's like a gross
I've
thing.
heard it with an elephant, not a frog.
Exactly. I think that was so, like, it's a book that's where it got the name, but he talks about the use of lists. He gets into what you're talking about.
In our office, we actually have a sign that says, "How do you eat an elephant one bite at a time?"
Yeah, exactly. But he talks about on that list, like, and I'm the same way. Like, for the most part, I just have like a running list. I use an app on my computer called Momentum, which every time I open a new browser, it's my core focus of the day. An inspirational quote, which right now it says, "Fear, uncertainty, and discomfort are your compasses toward growth." I don't know. It's a little weird. I don't know if I like that one. And there's a list off to the right where it has my to-do list, but he says that that's not enough.
Yeah.
You need a list that has, I think, 4 quadrants.
Okay.
And I think it's like important is one thing. Important, not urgent is another thing. Not important, not urgent. So it's like the bottom of your list. And then important and urgent. And you always put the important and urgent things at the top of your list.
Yep.
And that way you're getting the most important things done.
Yeah.
And then whatever you have time for, the little things that aren't important or aren't urgent, can wait.
Yeah.
Until they become more urgent or important.
Well, what I've been working on is I have the list. Everything goes on the list, right? So whatever it is, I think of it, it goes on the list. Then you check off 1, 2, and 3, and those 3 priorities will go over to my next page, and those are the only things that I'm working on. And
Nice.
they have actionable targets. Right, like this week.
So you eliminate all the other distractions.
Yeah, it still goes on the list. Doesn't mean it doesn't have to get done. Just doesn't have to be the top one right now. So like this week, we're working on guest counts in certain stores and weekly sales in another store. So like a member of my team every morning sends yesterday's guest counts in our Slack channel because I want everyone to see every day how many guests we did the day before. So like we're hitting the streets canvassing right now because we're trying to drive sales. So like I want people to see the impact of when we do that little bit extra and we hit the streets. It's not just because we feel like making everyone run around like a crazy person.
Guerrilla
It's
marketing.
because it makes an impact.
Yeah.
Right. So now we see every day the sales go up and the guest counts go up because we're hitting the streets, because we're working hard towards one unified goal.
I love that, man. I love that. Any other tips on lists use? Is there an app that you use to help, or is there just
No, just an Excel spreadsheet. My good friend Kathleen Wood, helps.
Yep.
Honestly, I
Kathleen.
talked about this with her for maybe like a year and a half. Last year, and I was like, I need this in some sort of technology form, because I just worked on lists, like just straight lists, and I kind of portrayed what I needed, and recently she designed it, built it, and was like, this is how you need to work.
That's
and I don't
awesome.
even know if she's doing with anyone else, but she knows how my brain works.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, we're going to use this tool to make sure we stay focused on these priorities. And like now I've been using it for a few weeks, and I'm like, this is like revolutionary. Like this
Nice.
just changed my life.
Yeah, she's great. There's only one other thing I can think to add that I know of in terms of lists. Going back to that quadrant of using urgent, not important, not important, or not
Yep.
urgent, whatever. Once you get that list narrowed down, the next thing to do is to put like, am I the only person that can do this, or can I delegate it?
Mm-hmm.
So like you drill down even more. It's a great book. I
Yeah.
just would say go check out that book. I think it's Brian Tracy, Eat That
Okay.
Frog. I'm not saying that to you, but you're welcome. I was saying to anybody who's listening to this if they want to take that further. So we talked about delegation. We talked about organizing what did we talk about? I know we unpackaged delegation. Are we still
Yeah.
doing delegation right now? Are we still in delegation?
It's a big piece of it.
Yeah. I think you said the other thing was
We talked
keeping
about
other people
priorities.
accountable. Priorities. Is that what it was?
Yep. Priorities, accountability.
Right.
And you do that by assigning real trackable goals, right? That's how we keep people accountable, is we identify what are the actual goals, right? Okay, we want to drive sales this week. All right, let's put a number on it. Like we want to do this number this week. And we're going to look at it every day. And we're going to visualize that we're either hitting it or we're not hitting it.
So scorecards.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everything needs to be trackable. You need to put a hard number on it. It's like, okay, we want X amount of guests. Like every day I want to see how many guests we have.
Got it. So do you sit down and help make these goals with people, or do they make their own goals? Do you assign
A
goals?
little bit of both.
Yeah.
A little bit of both. As I'm learning and becoming a better leader, I like to let them do it themselves and then kind of hone in on it,
Yeah.
right? And like tweak it. Like, hey, that's a really, really good starting point, but I think we should do it like this, So it's a little bit of both. You want their input. You want them
Yeah.
to feel like they're not just being told what to do. They're working and they're exercising their brain, and we're developing our team now, like from a personal standpoint and from a career standpoint. Like you're using those mental exercises to get better. So you're starting to think about things differently. So when you make a goal for yourself, like put a hard number on it. Like what how are you going to say if you did this or not? Right.
Right.
So then that's how we're going to look at it.
I like that. All right, let's move forward. So that's where you were 2 years ago. Today, this is how she's helped you, right? This is all the things she came in. What are your most recent challenges? Like, where are you today, and what are the things that keep you up at night, if anything?
I think staying on that priority list and staying true to it every week has been my number one challenge, because it's so easy to just fall back to what you already know and your muscle memory, right? Like, this is a new thing for me, and I need to build my muscle memory so much. So, like, as a CEO, new shit hits the fan every day. So understanding what you should work on today, or what doesn't need to be solved today, right? Like, so sticking to that priority list, and like, hey, there's 4 more fires, I got to put it on my list, but I don't have to deal with them right now because they're not,
But that's the beauty of a list, is it keeps track of it for you.
Yeah.
So you don't have to conjure up this list of priorities every morning when you wake up. You just pick up where you left off. Something comes up, put it on the list.
Yeah, Reid Hoffman was a CEO of LinkedIn, and he, serial entrepreneur, and he said every day when you go home, there's a fire burning. You just need to figure out which one, you can't put them all out. So you got to figure out which one needs to go out before you go home.
Yeah, which one's closest to the baby?
Yeah, exactly.
So going forward, like, where are you headed? What's the future? How are you evolving Bango Bulls to be ready for the future?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to build a first-in-class team to grow our franchising model and to continue to grow the business. We kind of try to say we want to be the white hat of the franchise world, and I think franchising in general kind of can be a little bit of a dirty industry. There's a lot of bad eggs out there. Like, when we're building a franchise business and a franchise support structure, like, I truly mean that. So, like, when we talk to the team today, it's like, when we have franchisees, it's the same exact thing as it's a corporate store. Like, there's so many franchise systems that are like them versus you, and like, that is the furthest thing from what we're trying to build here. Like, we're genuinely trying to build a full support system to give these franchisees any and everything they need to be successful, because our success is their success, right? And like, I genuinely mean that. So whether we're buying technologies, whether we're putting people in place to help support them, we're literally doing everything we can to make sure everyone is as successful as corporate locations, if not better.
Got it. So what does that actually look like? How are you going to do this? What's the strategy for executing this white hat team?
First is people, right? Putting people in place who've done these things before. We're hiring a team that has been in the franchising world. Like, we're new to this, right? Like, so we hire consultants that have been in franchising. We hire our new director of operations, comes from Noodles & Co., right? 500 something locations in a franchise system, understands what it's supposed to look like. And we're using his knowledge, or whoever else's knowledge on the team, to help build our structure. What did they do that you liked? What did they do that you didn't like?
What, without getting into details, because I don't want to disclose where the issues came from, for what are some of the things they identified in their past lives that they want to prevent you from making with your...
I mean, it's really just like basic systems and stuff, because once, especially from the larger corporations, is like we said with the ship and trying to steer things, it's like once you have 500 units, it's really hard to change anything, right? So like super challenging. So like thinking about everything we're doing is like, hey, can we make the right decision here?
Is this scalable? It makes sense now, but are we going to regret this 100 locations from now?
Yeah. And whatever those pain points were, like, just literally identify the pain points and let's talk through them.
Yeah.
Like, what did you like about your last role? What did they do really well? And what didn't they do? So, okay, how does that fit into our ecosystem and our process?
Right.
Like, what can we grab from that?
So talking about building building it out before you move into it, right? Building out. So, like, you're talking about people, getting the right people on your team, i.e. the directors of operations, the executive coaches, things like this. What elements are you missing? Do you have a CFO?
We do not have a CFO.
So how are you prioritizing who you bring on first when you're building this out?
Literally build out an entire org chart for the next 3 years. Like, we put goals, just like how we do with our team now. Like, the corporate team, myself, I have goals too. Like, I want to hit X amount of locations. If I want to hit X amount of locations, then I need this many roles. It's going to cost this much money for this many roles. But then on paper, okay, this is where our money from a corporate standpoint can help fund this. This is where we're going to need new money. We're going to have to go find a way to support all this infrastructure, right? Because it gets heavy. Like, the corporate stores can only do so much. Now we have all this payroll from a management side that we need to figure out. So literally just plan it out. Put everything on paper. So, all right, what are our 3-year goals? And then break that down and work backwards.
Got it. What else needs to be built out? When you're talking about technology before, where are you in the technological front as you move forward? How are you looking to evolve?
I mean, we're definitely forward thinking. We definitely use technology a pretty substantial amount in all aspects of the business. Like we talked about cooking, right? Like everywhere in the excuse me, everywhere in the restaurant. Excuse me.
Take your time.
Everywhere in the restaurant.
Some water?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Everywhere in the restaurant, like tickets come in and they're routed to the appropriate stations. Like now in today's world, there's 10 different places you can get an order from. But like the restaurant, the folks in the restaurant shouldn't have to care about that.
Yeah.
Every ticket should come in exactly the same way.
Yeah.
And they make it and then they put it on the, put it to be picked up or put it to be sat down.
So is this where Lunchbox comes in?
Lunchbox is definitely one of those key players. Yep.
What else are the other players that you're pulling on?
The most recent one that we've invested in that I think is like super transformational is called Opus.
What's Opus?
Opus is a learning platform, all done via handheld device or tablet. The ability to create and distribute content is at the heart of training, right? And that is what the heart of Opus does. It allows you to build out training platforms that all come directly to the phone, so you can have one-to-one communication or group communication with every person in your system. So for us, that's really 2 systems, right? That's the restaurant teams that work for our corporate stores, who are the team members and general managers, but then we also have franchisees, right? So from the team member standpoint, what if I can release a new product rollout, right? And I could show a video on the phone and then give you a quiz directly on the phone. You can answer it. Now I know that all these employees watched our training, did our training, completed it, right?
So how is Opus different than Wisetail?
Opus is all done on the mobile device, whereas Wisetail mostly done laptop, desktop. Today's world, especially with our workforce, like our workforce is generally pretty young, high school, college kids. So we need to be able to get that in their hands.
So they're both essentially LMS.
Yeah, I'd put them both in LMS category, yes.
Is there a little bit of redundancy there?
No. Bango's not using Wisetail. We're only using Opus.
Okay.
That was just an organization decision based on the different types of
people working.
Yeah.
Got it.
So that was just a different decision we made. And again, it's just about the ability for Bango. We made the decision that it was about the ability to create and distribute, and that's what Opus allowed us to do super quick and super fast, super easy.
Got it.
But then on the franchisee side, like that's what I really love is like we can create inventory management training, right? And send it directly to a franchisee.
It's the same no matter where.
And he's like, hey, I'm having problems with my cost of goods. What's the problem? Hey, have you taken the restaurant inventory management training? I see you haven't actually. If you start here, this is probably a good step. If you don't, then we'll have another conversation and we'll be able to talk. It's about creating a frictionless system, right? Like just like your podcasts go up and anyone can access them at any point, right? Like same thing. Like once one person has a problem, somebody else is probably going to have that problem too. Right. So we're creating a content library for anyone in our system. So then when they have a problem, they can access that, or we can distribute that just super fast.
Right.
And then we can see if they took it. Then we can see where they maybe failed.
Is the problem still happening?
Exactly. Exactly. So like we're trying to make the whole system frictionless. I think that's the goal, is to make the system frictionless by being able to create and distribute content in a fast and easy way.
Now, in your opinion, what is the secret to scaling culture?
Being real, like you have to actually be it. Like you have to carry yourself in a certain way. I always joke, like I did another speaking engagement. It was like restaurant people are real. Like this, right? You have to be real.
That's why I freaking love my
job.
100%. Like I'm trying to use the F word a little less often.
Yeah,
I was pretty bad about that for a while.
I have also not a good mouth.
I'll wait until my guest drops the F ball, and then I usually play F ball tennis with them for a while. Yeah. But I won't be the first one to do it anymore. I think I already did it once. I'm not gonna do that.
So you just have to be real. You have to let people see your true colors, and you have to be that person every day. And you have to advocate for letting people give you feedback, right? Like I'm the CEO, like I don't care about the title. You can give me any team member, any GM can message me on Slack at any point and say, hey, like, why did you do this that way?
Yeah.
And I'll ask them, what don't you like about it? And then we can dig into it.
Are you familiar with, was it Dunbar's number?
I'm not.
So it's this theory that we can only handle about 150 relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So when your business grows beyond 150 relationships, how are you going to be real with people when you can't keep track of people?
That's a good question. I think with your team, right? As the system gets larger, the infrastructure supports that system. So maybe it's one person to every 150 people. If that's what the data tells me, I need one franchise business consultant for every 150 units because this is all they can handle, right?
Yeah.
And give them the tools to make their life easier, like a content distribution tool or like Slack, where we can have open communication. Everyone knows what's going on. It's like, what are the things that you need to make your job easier and have a better relationship?
The
and we'll provide those
for the Kool-Aid to flow.
Yeah.
So they can drink it, right?
Yep, absolutely. And you have to listen, right? Like we talked about before, you just have to listen to what people want and then give them honest feedback on whether it's possible or not.
Yep. So part of our mission here at Restaurant Unstoppable, our mission statement, I'm actually reworking the mission statement right now. Because it was to inspire, empower, and transform the industry so we can transform the world. But as you so graciously,
That's it. You got it.
Yeah, as you so graciously put, you got to start with why. People have to understand why. So our mission statement is to change the world through changing, inspiring, empowering the restaurant industry.
Okay.
On that note of change and transformation, what change or transformation do you think the restaurant industry is in need of?
Going back to simplicity. I know I'm like a broken record here, but like I think years ago, or maybe like 2 years ago, it was like, oh, we got to be using this technology. Now it's like, all right, now you have to pick the right technology, and now people are like forgetting about good food, clean restaurants, and great service. Like simplification is always like, wherever you get lost, go back to the simplification, right? Go back to those core things. And that's where you start. Like our mission statement is fresh, flavorful, fast, and friendly all day and every day. Like super basic, super straightforward, because anything we do, we have to make sure those 4 F's are being hit, because that's what's guiding everything we do.
Guys, how is this transforming the industry? I think I might have missed the connection.
Oh, sorry. My bad.
No, you're fine.
So how is it transforming the industry?
How does this, yeah. So the answer was we need to simplify.
Yes, I'm sorry. That was the answer. We need to simplify. I think there's too many toys out there.
Yeah.
And there's too much noise. So from an industry, we need to make sure we're focused on the things that matter most,
right,
because that's what the restaurant world is.
I agree 100% with that statement. And I think that from like an individual person, human level, I think that's what we're trying to figure out too. It's like, hey, as we move forward into the future, can we do it with some different values in mind? Like some different objectives other than being as profitable as possible? Like, is profitability important? Yes.
Yep.
It's the blood that makes our businesses go. It's the fuel. I get that. Is it the most important thing? Can we put collective security ahead of that? How do we create a world where people can like do what they love and also feel like they're being fiscally, responsible at the same time?
Yeah.
Like, do you have to sacrifice fiscal security to like what you do? Like, how do we do that?
That's the $1 million question.
I mean, I think there's solutions though, I think it comes back to what you're saying is focus on what matters. That's kind of where I was going with this. Like, what really matters?
Yeah.
People.
Yes.
People matter.
Yeah.
We exist to serve each other.
No, that I agree about.
Yeah, and I think that it's pretty attainable.
I mean, that's the roots of hospitality where it started, right? Like,
and I'm pretty middle of the road.
To truly serve.
Right, exactly. I'm middle of the road. I'm not recommending we have the government come in and like regulate everything. I don't think that's the answer.
Yeah.
But I think that if you teach people what right is, most people are they want to do right. They just need to know what right is.
Yeah.
I think the lessons in business for a while have been make as much money as possible, and that's make your stakeholders happy.
Yeah. No, it certainly can convolute it a little bit. Right. I think there's a balance, just like everything, right? There's a balance in everything. Yeah.
Anything we haven't discussed today? Anything that you were hoping to discuss that would come out of your story? Unique knowledge, experience?
No, I mean, I think we covered a lot today, no?
Yeah. I really enjoyed it.
Checked a lot of boxes. Me too.
You were great. So before we go to the speed round, the mission statement again is to inspire, empower, and transform the industry, transform the world. We gotta get better at flipping that around.
Yeah, when are we making the transition
What's that?
of the flip of
Right
the
now,
mission statement?
mission statement is to transform the world or to change the world through. I'm still workshopping it. I had it locked in, and then Anna told me that we should clean it up, and she suggested something. I can't remember what she said. Sorry, Anna. I love you. Okay. The mission statement is basically to transform the industry and transform the world. How have you personally transformed? Who are you today versus the man you were? Was it 2016 when you went all in?
Yeah, I'm a much more patient person. Like I've always been a type A personality, but I've always been like an individual sales guy. And I think as I transition to now leading a team, like patience and listening and understanding has really transformed me to a different leader. And I think that's what's going to help this company grow moving forward.
I love it, man. One more quick break to thank our sponsors, and we're going to bust out a speed round.
Good deal.
We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that right now, Restaurant Systems Pro is offering a no strings attached 60-day trial that will help you improve your systems, increase your profit, and find better work-life balance. All you have to do is click the link below.
We're back, and the first question I have for you is, what is your it factor, a habit, a trait, a characteristic you believe most contributes to your success, a strength?
My positivity.
What is your biggest weakness?
My inability to prioritize sometimes.
Prioritization.
Yeah.
What is one question you ask or thing you look for when you're growing your team?
Positivity.
And how do you find that?
Asking questions, understanding people both from a professional and a personal standpoint.
Got it. What is your biggest challenge today?
Prioritization.
How are you overcoming it?
I am working diligently, trying to use tools, right, to stay focused and create the muscle memory that is needed to do it the right way.
Got it. Share one code of conduct or behavior you teach your team, a core value, a way to be.
There's more than one way of looking at something, so make sure we understand we're not just forcing our opinions, on our teams. We're understanding what they see and how they interpret what we're telling them.
That's been a huge life lesson for me personally, man. Just even with this podcast of like, I started this podcast to get answers.
Yeah.
And I only got more confused.
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to be telling people to like, this is how you do it. And the only thing I've come to realize is that there is no one way to do it.
100%.
There's so many variables.
Yeah.
It's only the right way for you. And only you know what that is,
Yep.
right? Anyway, I digress. But yes, I 100% can get behind that one. What is one uncommon standard of service you teach your team? So something that's common within the four walls of your Bango Bulls, but not common throughout the industry, to go above and beyond guest experience or expectation.
Sometimes the customer who has the worst experience could turn to be your number one customer.
How do you do that?
By going above and beyond. Like let's say one time someone's delivery goes wrong, right? The delivery driver didn't make it there. By getting in your car and going and dropping that acai bowl, that salad to that customer,
You just want them back.
you just want them back, and they're coming back and they're telling all their friends.
Right.
So sometimes you could take a bad experience and make it the best customer you've ever had.
Great stuff. What is one book that's a must read to make us a better person or a restaurant owner?
The 1 Minute Manager.
Biggest lesson from that book?
Feedback is the breakfast of champions.
Yes.
That's where that's from.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I didn't make that connection.
I am if you can't tell, I'm a big fan of simplicity. That's like another thing from a management standpoint, like super quick read,
Yes.
super simple, but really like gets the point across.
Yeah. What is one thing you feel restaurateurs don't do well enough or often enough?
Tell their team they're doing a great job.
Coming back to it. Consistency. I like it. What is one piece of technology that has had a huge impact that you've recently adopted that you're just super excited about? I know we talked a lot about technology. Maybe you want to echo something.
I want to talk about Opus. Again, I think what they're doing is revolutionary. They have a new AI tool as well. So we're taking all of our paper content and we're putting it into the AI tool, and it's spitting out new courses for us.
Nice.
So like we're not even, now when it comes to creating, it's like, hey, we already have this. We're just putting it into
What's the point
system.
of even teaching people how to read anymore?
I know. Really, it's wild. It's wild.
Oh, yeah. I do love that, though. I'm going to check out Opus for sure. Opus, look up. I'm coming after you.
They'd be a great sponsor.
Sponsor this. You said
It
it.
would be a great sponsor.
You heard him. You heard him. Okay, this is the last question. I think you heard me ask James this one when he was rolling his eyes at me. If you got the news, you'd be leaving this world tomorrow. All the memories of you, your work, and your restaurants would be lost with your departure, with the exception of 3 pieces of wisdom you could leave behind for the good of humanity and your legacy. What would those 3 pieces of wisdom be?
Just to be nice, be a good person.
1.
Work hard.
2.
And enjoy every day.
3. Ryan, man, this has been a lot of fun, dude. Thank you so much. We wrap up every episode by calling somebody out. So who's one person you respect and admire? And as somebody who's a listener, you said you've listened to over 100 episodes of the show, man.
Yeah.
That blows my mind.
Big fan.
Like, you don't know how many of these things I've done to actually now have people who I interview who have been listening to the show for years. That's crazy.
Yeah,
man.
it's
hard
amazing.
for me to wrap my mind
Amazing
around
show.
that.
I appreciate it.
So who would I have to get on the show? How can I repay you?
I have a friend, Anthony Tartaglia. He has a hospitality group called Costa Verde Hospitality. He does some really amazing, cool things with his spaces. He's got vision like you've never seen before. Some of his spaces and designs he has, food, cocktails, unbelievable. Definitely
Cool.
Somebody a little different than the way we're growing. Someone
Nice.
does something a little different.
Here in New York?
Yeah, he's here in New York.
Nice. I'll be back soon.
Yep, but definitely somebody to check out. His spaces are amazing.
Say that name for me one more time.
Anthony Tartaglia.
Anthony Tartaglia, look out. I'm coming after you. I'd love to get you on the show. And how can we connect? Maybe we're interested in your franchise. Maybe we might be a future partner.
Absolutely. You can get me on LinkedIn anytime. The business has a website, bangobowls.com. We also have a separate franchising side of the business as well. But if you're looking to get me personally, LinkedIn's usually the best way.
Cool. And now is when I say thank you so much, my man. I just ask the questions. You make what I do possible. I literally cannot do what I do without people like you. There is no questioning. You are unstoppable.
Thanks, Eric. It was awesome.
Thank you. Cheers.
Yep.